So here's some of the things that I have heard so far. I've got to make like my workspace out of this area here because we're going to do some work today. The schedule's shifted a bunch. And so I have completely changed my speaking plan maybe 6 times this morning, which is okay. That's how I do. But at points, you'll see me freeze. I'm not having a stroke. I'm listening to see what the next thing I should do is. Okay. So don't spaz out if I don't spaz out. If I spaz out, spaz out. All right, so here's some things I've heard. Your soul is part of the mission, and so are your teammates' souls. Soul care equals crisis capacity. Consider your strategic game plan to care for your soul. You can collaborate with God in loving God, others, and yourself. I never had a boss like that. I didn't like that one at all. It makes me want to ask you this question. And let's check in, like let's be all the way present. I'm going to actually ask you to find this inside. Take a minute and find it. How do you wish you were led? And how do you wish you led? How do you want it to feel when someone's leading you? And how do you want it to feel when you lead? In 30 seconds, just find that. And it doesn't need to be words. Just find that the way you want it to feel. It should be right here, right? Find it. Okay, well done. Now, I need you to give me your eyes. Stop writing. Stop doing stuff. I want you to feel the way you want to feel when you lead and when you're led. And I want you to look right at me. A few years ago at an NGLC, somebody said the best we can do is kind of put them back together, give them a space where they can heal and be safe, and then send them back to environments that are caustic for their souls. And that's not okay with me. Nope, they can't go back to environments that are caustic for their souls. So I kind of set myself with some friends who are smarter than me on the question, how do we engender environments that actually build souls? Why isn't this a slightly intensified version of normal? Why is this such a contrast to the environments you work in, we work in? Ecosystems have different kinds of species. See my socks? I'm so old that cramped my leg. Yeah. I've been wearing socks with animals on them. Who can tell me what the animals are that I've been wearing on my feet? Foxes, orcas. Go ahead. No rabbits. That's messed up. Yeah. What kind of socks have I been wearing? Not these ones. These are awesome. I've told several of you. Keystone species. Good. Every ecosystem has 1 million species in it, and every species is important. Okay, every environment, every organizational culture has 1 million species in it, and every species is important. But some species are more important than others, not because they do more important things, but because certain things hang on them. They're more important to our conversation. So indicator species like canaries in a coal mine or frogs in a pond, they get sick first or die first. When they're not doing well, you know something's sick in the system. In the church, that's women, singles, and children. Foundation species are the species that are so common that the entire rest of the ecosystem rides on them and no one notices, like plankton or phytoplankton in the ocean. Oikoi, households, are that in the church. I want you to pay attention to the fact that the Sunday morning big show is none of these species. It is not the most important thing we do. It is not. Oikoi, households, foundation species. Keystone species are species that have a disproportionately large effect on the rest of the ecosystem, given their very small number. Wolves, foxes, orcas, beavers, you. Leaders, especially leaders, perhaps even especially leaders who don't have a formal role, you drive the quality of the ecosystem. Every time we do this conference, we're like, oh, it's so special because you never know what's going to happen. You know exactly what's going to happen. This weird stuff. It's going to happen because you're being led well. And that's the only reason. Jesus visits and couples up with sound leadership, and your souls get better, not worse. The people around you, souls are getting worse, or your soul's getting worse. Someone's not bad, they're just leading badly. Okay, so that drives. I'm not content to think about, oh well, we can't do anything about the ecosystem, but today in the 20 minutes I have left, we can't do anything about the ecosystem, but we can do something about the keystone species. So we're going to focus our energy on what me and my brilliant friends who are smarter than me have been focusing on for the last few years. How do you lead in such a way that it is generative, that it's developmental by nature? How can we get a simple imagination, a vivid imagination of how to lead in a way that makes people more, not less? So we're going to try to imagine that together. Are you game for that? Okay. And then if there's time, I'm going to teach you a tool, a simple conversation that like a monkey can have with somebody. And if you're as smart as a monkey, and I know you are, you can become instantly much more developmental with the relationships you've got. If we have time, we'll get to that tool. If we don't have time, I'll probably run over break and give it to you anyway. All right. Jim's like, you can just kind of lead it until 12:15. So I'm going to give him the mic back at like 12:45. Is this working? Am I too short? Gabe, next slide. Let's go next slide, Gabe. All right, so I want to contend that competent generative leadership amounts to fostering glory. It amounts to noticing glory and fostering it. I'll explain. Next slide. Can you see that? Let's read it out loud together, okay? I'll start us and then I'll put the mic down. I consider that our present sufferings are not worth comparing with the glory that will be revealed in us. For the creation waits in eager expectation for the children of God to be revealed. For the creation was subjected to frustration, not by its own choice, but by the will of the one who subjected it, in hope that the creation itself will be liberated from its bondage to decay and obtain the freedom of the glory of the children of God. Okay, I'm going to ask some questions. What is the creation hoping for? Liberation from what? Bondage to decay. Okay? It's waiting to be set free from the result of the fall. Right? Do we agree? Okay. What sets it free? The revelation of the glory of the children of God. Not God's glory. Yours. The world waits for the revelation of what you actually are. That alone makes soul care the most important and strategic thing you can do. The world is not waiting for the revelation of the glory of God, according to God. According to God, the world is waiting for the revelation of your glory. I'd like you to say that, my glory. My glory. And in saying that, you diminish God's glory none. Just like the light bulb doesn't diminish the light by being happy it's bright. It's all about Jesus. It's not about me. You can't be more spiritual than Jesus. And if Jesus and you disagree, you're wrong. The whole world, this is what saves the world. Your glory. And sometimes people like to do, especially Americans. I'm sorry, Jay-Woo. We're just dumb as bricks. We say we were justified and we're being sanctified and one day we'll be glorified. Except in Romans 8, the passage, the bit that follows this, it says, those who he justified, he also glorified. What tense is that? Past. You are not waiting to be glorified. It's done. We just can't see it yet. An apple seed is not waiting to be an apple. It is. It's just not. You just don't see it yet. It just needs a minute and some help. Okay, next slide. Let's read this together. When Christ, your light appears, then he also will appear with them glorious. So what we're waiting on is not you to become glorious. I was going to say gloriful. That's dumb. These socks might be gloriful. They might be. But you are glorious and it will appear. Is Christ waiting to be glorious? No, he is glorious. So we're waiting for his appearance. We're waiting for your appearance as well. But we're not just waiting. The world's being saved right now by your glory. And I will admit happily, without any reticence at all, it's a derived glory, right? It's the glory of the image bearer, not the image origin. But it's more than that. It's the glory of the image bearer blended with the image of the perfect image bearer. We heard a song the other day on the radio, like more like you, less like me. I mean, if I could have torn the radio out and like thrown it, just ran it over. More like him, more like you. Because when you're all lit up with Jesus and I'm all lit up with Jesus, different stuff happens in the world. We already did a tour of duty with one Jesus. We're trying to get a tour up with a lot of us. Whole bunch of different kinds of glory. Next one. And we all, who with unveiled faces contemplate the Lord's glory, are being transformed into his image with ever increasing glory, which comes from the Lord, who is the Spirit. You English nerds, what's the verb tense here? Present progressive, and it's passive voice, right? Right? We are being transformed. So I am being transformed, not from crappy to glorious. Other translations read from glory to glory. Your story doesn't start, you're a mess. Story starts, you're beautiful. Something broke, but man, you're beautiful. Something, yeah, but you're beautiful. And you're moving from glory to glory. From beautiful to more beautiful. From powerful to more powerful. Not from crippled to mediocre. It's happening to you. The Spirit's doing it to you as you look at Jesus looking at you. Not as you do historical referent to the historical Jesus. Jesus is alive. He's historical the same way my wife's historical. She's still around. As you look at Jesus looking at you, you are changed by the Holy Spirit. From glory to glory. This is very good news for the world, because the next slide. The God of this world has blinded the minds of the unbelievers to keep them from seeing the light of the gospel of the glory of Christ, who is the image of God. For God, who said, "Let light shine out of darkness," has shown in our hearts to give the light of the knowledge of the glory of God in the face of Christ. Oh, I skipped to Jesus, sorry. Yep, face of Jesus Christ. I have a friend in Malaga who has a thing on his desk that says, "Get Jesus everywhere." And I like the idea, like you can get Jesus anywhere, but he means we've got to export Jesus to all the places where he isn't. I'm even starting to get itchy about the notion of limited access, or people with like not enough access to Jesus. It's like having not enough access to air. It's all the places. It's everywhere. There's no place that we have to get Jesus to. The entire cosmos is upheld by the word of his power. He's been there the whole time. The problem isn't that the God of this world has limited their access. It's the God of this world has limited his visibility. He's there. They can't see him. So the problem isn't delivery. The problem's discovery. We need people who are good at seeing Jesus and good at making Jesus visible and willing to do the inner work to do that. That's how the world's saved. The world is saved as your glory and his glory, which are the same thing, más o menos, come to their full expression in the world. The world is saved as you are saved in the world. The world is changed as you are changed in the world. So we go out into the world to get changed, not to change it. And we go in here to change the world. But the way you do the out is by going in, and the way you do the in is by getting out there. And the solution to the unbeliever's problem is the making visible of the glory of Christ. Where? Where is it at? Has shown in our hearts. You don't make Jesus visible by being awesome or with super cool big shows, or you make Jesus visible. Yeah. Excuse me. Time out. Yeah. Yeah. That's all right. That's all. I'm not allowed to talk anymore. I'm just kidding. No. Yeah. Yeah. Hi, virtual friends. I will slow the heck down. Yeah. All right. So let's recap. Really slowly. Yeah. From the very beginning. Oh, he's getting his pen. All right. Sorry, all my friends. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Hang on. All right. Good leadership is fostering glory in people. It's not putting glory in, it's finding it. It requires eye contact and patience. It requires being interested. It requires accepting the fact that every sunrise is just like every other sunrise, and every one of them is a unique epiphany. And that's just as true about the people that you lead as it is about the sun. The world needs the sun to live, and the world needs the light inside your people to live. The world waits for the glory of those people you lead and for your glory, which is not in competition with Christ's glory, but is an expression of it. Not at all to the diminishment of either one of you. As you increasingly find your glory and express it, the world is saved. It is not by your massive effort, but by your willing engagement. So if we're going to lead people to live in that story, which is so astoundingly different from the story that I grew up in, probably that you grew up in, we're going to need a vivid image. I hope that's better, all my friends. All right. And listen, you can wave me down when I'm going too fast or too hot or too hard, or it's like, man, those socks are too bright. You can wave me down at any time and I'll slow it down. You don't even have to come up here and huddle like they're not going to notice. Like what? He doesn't want to dishonor me. So we do this. Yeah. Every once in a while, I feel kind of awkward about my people skills, and then I don't. Yeah. Next. Yeah. Can I have the next slide, Gabe? Because get me out of here. What is glory? So one time, a long time ago, 15 years ago, I was at a conference in Toronto and I got to hear Dallas Willard speak. Dallas Willard is a hero of mine. If you've never read anything by Dallas Willard, like do it really slowly and drink a lot of coffee, but do it, right? Yeah. He says, hold this thought before your mind. And I did, and I've been doing it ever since. I've never stopped holding this thought. The righteous will shine forth like the sun in the kingdom of their Father. That's you. The righteous will shine forth like the sun in the kingdom of their Father. Jesus said that about you. That's you. Then he defined glory, and he's done this in his writing a couple times. Next slide. He defined glory as the effulgence of power. Effulgence means the too muchness of power. It's the idea of incandescence. Thousands of years ago, when I was a child, we lit rooms with these ancient things called incandescent light bulbs. And they work by passing power through a filament, but it's too much power. So some of the power escapes as light, right? And Willard says that's glory. When there's so much power that it escapes as brightness. And I disagree, humbly. I think Willard's smarter than me, but I disagree. I think it's more than that. Next slide. I think it's strength, I think it's power and beauty. And I'll tell you why I think that in a minute. First, Psalm 96, strength, it's a psalm about God's glory. And the psalmist says, strength and beauty are in your sanctuary. So when I see power expressed well, or when I see flashes of beauty, I know that the veil is thin there, and that's where the glory is. So I want to find it, and I want to blow on it. I want to water it. I want to nurture it. That's what I want to do. And that sentence, that is good leadership. And if you don't have time for that, you're not leading. That, noticing the glory and nurturing it, is good leadership. And if you don't have time for that, you are not leading. You're doing something else. Probably has something more to do with your ego or others' expectations, but you are not leading. Say it again. Yeah, it hurts my feelings to say it, so I'm not saying that again. Yeah, Sensei.
Saying that notice the glory means that if you notice the glory in a person,
yeah,
and you see strength and beauty in them, then you're going to nurture it.
That's what I'm saying. When I see your strength or your beauty, I want to look at that. There are times where I go to my spiritual direction sessions where I'm the director. I'm so sorry. Some of you are my directees. Sometimes I go just to see what I see, because it's just beautiful. And it's usually not in the moments that you're saying something that you think is beautiful. It's usually when you're like pretty sure that you're all a terrible person, and I'm just seeing this astounding epiphany in front of me. Oh my goodness, if you could see the edges of what I see when I see you. If you don't have time for that, what are you doing with your time? Why wake up? Okay, so next slide. This is what I actually I've said this to some of you. If I haven't said it to you, it's not because I don't love you. It's because I try to only say it when it's true and when it's the right thing to say. But I really sometimes have to squint. It's just too good. You are good. Maybe not intrinsically, but who cares? You're not here because you're a monster. Well, I'm not entirely good. Well, no cup of tea is entirely hot, but there's a point where it's hot enough that it's good news. Good enough, man. Good enough. Good enough to be good news. This is what, you can click through some slides until you get to the long list. This is what Barnabas saw in Saul. I'm connecting this to our theme for the week. This is what Barnabas saw in Saul. I'm convinced Barnabas saw flashes of power and beauty in Saul. And so he went and got him. And he brought him into, he stood up for him. And then he went and got him and brought him into situations he wasn't quite ready for. And he developed him and he developed him. By Acts 13, Barnabas is at the top of the list and Saul is at the bottom. By one chapter later, it's Paul and Barnabas. So not only did Barnabas make room for Saul, Barnabas had enough room in his heart to be displaced by Saul. And when I was a kid, I was taught Saul means big, mighty warrior, and Paul means little bitty fella. And I felt good about that. But in reality, in first century Rome, on your birth certificate, if you were a Roman citizen, you had multiple names. One of them was your Jewish name or your people of origin name, and another was your Roman name. Saul's Roman name was Paul. So when God says to him, you will be called Paul, he's not changing his name. He's letting him know your time with the Jews is over soon. One day you're going to step into who you are, and you're going to be going by a different name. And who midwifed that process? Barnabas. Barnabas. What's that side? Say. Slow down. Good. So Barnabas midwifed this process of bringing Saul to Paul and bringing Paul to the world. Barnabas fostered glory. And then they got in a fight. Do you know why this is good news to me? This is bad news. They got in a fight. You know why this is good news to me? Barnabas developed Paul to the point where Paul understood himself as Barnabas's peer. He never felt he had to, he got him to the point he didn't have to kowtow to Barnabas's superiority. He didn't have to kneel to Barnabas's age or strength or experience. He could say, I think you're wrong and I want to do this. If you can bring someone to a place where they can do that and you can both walk off, that isn't such bad news. And so as somebody said, maybe Shane, Paul picked Silas. And you know when he picked him? Yeah, he picked him 5 verses before this and a chapter before that when he met him in another city and brought him along. This is how we do. This is how we save the world. We notice glory and we put our time and energy into fostering it, even if it does not serve our ministry ends. We notice glory, we put our time and energy into fostering it, even if it does not serve our ministry ends. That's why I'm wearing the bright socks. If you want to find someone's glory, you have to start at their feet. When you want to find someone's glory, you got to start at their feet. The purpose of power is to make strong. So when we try to lead like from a low power distance position, that's not necessarily good news. You want people to have a lot of power. You want them to be the people who give their power away. So you find the people who give power away and you give them lots of power, because they will find people's feet and blow on them until they are a raging blaze. And that's how we lead, and that's how we save the world. Or what else are we doing? Yeah? Okay, so let's see where we are on time. Let's move forward with this, actually. I think I want to move forward with this, even if we don't give you the tool, because the tool is in your folder. We might give you the tool, but I don't think the tool makes sense apart from the context. I typically like to go tool first, but I think you'll get bloody knuckles if you don't know why to use this tool and when. So is that okay? Okay, let's keep going. So good leaders foster glory in people, and great leaders foster glory in people and environments. Attention, acceptance, affirmation, and affection. These are our power tools in developing people. Attention, acceptance, affirmation, and affection. I see you. You're good enough. Yes and amen. I love you. That's good, brother. Thank you. All right. I see you. I made that up. I see you. I've got to remember what I said. I see you. You're good enough. Yes and amen. I love you. That is to a human heart what sunshine is to a leaf. It's more than warm. It's the engine. It creates a vacuum, not a vacuum of emptiness, but a draw. The way the sun pulls a plant up toward it, this pulls a human soul up to maturity. It's not teaching them more things. It's incarnating as best you can the posture Jesus is taking toward them. Okay. I'm going as slow as I can, but you can wave me down again. Really, I'm not making it up. This is super hard for me. There you go, slow. All right, next.
Virgil.
Yes, Sensei.
You're doing good at slow.
Thank you, Jim. It's good. All right. Okay, I love you back. I see you. Okay. Yeah. Quit wasting my time. Trying to be productive. Oh, hey, that song, right? That song, that was good. Everything we did today was exactly what it makes me so happy. Confirmed all the things. Fruitfulness and productivity aren't the same. And if you lead people to be productive, they might be fruitful. If you lead people to be fruitful, they'll be productive when they need to be. But the mechanisms of fruitfulness are different than the mechanisms of productivity. You need them to be productive to make your ministry successful. You need them to be fruitful to save the world. Pick one. Okay, so when we teach people how to develop others or to participate, collaborate, I think Josh said, in loving themselves, in the development of themselves. And can we even say, oh my gosh, glorifying themselves? We talk about 3 pieces of a tree. We talk about thrive, work, develop. We want to teach them how to thrive, which connects with what Shane and Lee were saying. We want to teach them how to work in integrated ways instead of disintegrated ways, but how to be a team in a way that integrates them instead of in a way that's toxic. Right? And we want to teach them how to develop, how to become the unique thing they are. Every tree's trunk looks just about the same, but the branches are where we're unique. Yeah. Okay. So thrive. We want you to learn how to thrive spiritually, physically, cognitively, emotionally, and relationally. All of them. And I'm not going to go fast, but I'm also not going to repeat this. I'm going to get, when it's lunchtime, I'm going to take my lunch outside to the left. And if you want to know more about this next bit, you just come find me and we'll talk about it. Okay. In order to help people thrive spiritually, we ask them to design practices. What's your strategic game plan, right? Design practices to withdraw, to gather, and to reflect on what happens when they obey Jesus. Withdraw, gather, obey. Physically, we want you to pay attention to how you eat, move, and recover. What you put in, how you move it, and how do you rest. Cognitively, we want you to attend to what are you going to do to learn? What are you going to do to focus, like to stop learning or checking YouTube or Facebook or Insta or whatever, and play. How are you going to use your mind to take yourself less seriously? People who do not play become unhuman. Unhuman people are bad at everything except being animals. Play, huh? Learn, focus, play. Emotionally, we want you to notice your feelings without judgment or excuse. It's going to be notice, interview, manage. Notice your feelings without judgment or excuse. If you have a negative emotion, that's good news. If I'm angry, it's probably because someone's stopping me from getting what I want. That's fantastic information, because the only question Jesus asked repeatedly in the Gospels is, what do you want? And if I'm going to be his student, I have to know the answer. So if I kill my anger before I learn what it taught me, I'm aborting my own discipleship, right? Positive emotions, negative emotions, notice them. Interview them to find out what they can tell you about what you want. And then, of course, learn to manage them before you vomit them in my eyes, like one of those lizards with the acid breath, right? Learn to manage it, right? You want to be able to turn it down, but you also need to be able to turn it up. I would say, I would bet that more than half the room have muted emotions, and you've got to learn how to turn those bad boys up so you can be like alive. You got to clap on that one. All right. All right, then relationally, it's discern, invest, grow. You can't love everybody transformatively. And you don't get to pick who you love transformatively. You shouldn't. You should ask Jesus. Who are the people that I really am supposed to be investing my energy in? Ask him, he'll answer you. Jesus isn't a jerk. Then invest. The happiest people in the world are the people not who are being invested in. This happiness research demonstrated this. The happiest people in the world are the people who are investing in the relationships most important to them. If you want to thrive, you have to invest in the relationships most important to you, and then grow in your skill. All right, so I'm gonna leave that alone now. Okay, you can talk to me later if you want. We also try to help our people learn how to work in a way that integrates, and I'm gonna go right past this one, right straight past it.
Virgil,
Yeah,
do me a favor.
yeah. Slow down.
No. Talk to our friends virtually
Yeah.
and say, if you have a thought, put it in the chat space.
Mm-hmm.
And let's say in about 5 minutes, have Abe read them back to you.
Good.
You might be able to do a brief response to our virtual friends.
Virtual friends. You didn't hear that. It's just so good. And I just don't, I feel like all these people are watching me talk to you. It's super awkward. I hope it's not awkward for you. If you have a thought or a question, put it in the chat space, and Abe will select some and give them to me in 5 minutes, and I'll interact with them. Okay, good. All right. Your work doesn't have to pull you apart. Are we okay? Energy still high enough to keep this going? Okay. All right. Woo. Your work doesn't have to pull you apart. Let me give you an example. I was recently in a leader development cohort as one of the leaders being developed, recently being like 5 years ago. And they had us read a book about work family balance. It's the worst book I've ever read. I hate the book. It's just bad. I'm not going to tell you the title because that would be really mean to the writer. And I'm writing a book and I hope, okay, let's leave that alone. Work family balance. It postures you pinned between the needs of work and the needs of family, and success is imaged as balancing them. So if I'm getting 6 units of pull to the left and 6 units of pull to the right, and I get that just right, where do I go? Nowhere. If you want to do nothing with your life, seek balance. It would be better if we could get both horses pulling that way. And then we go. Right? So that's an integration of your oikos and your mission. You can integrate your work with God's. You can integrate your heart with your team, your heart with your host community. You can integrate your vocation and your ministry. A friend of mine said, I'm so sad I'm gonna have to get out of ministry and like go back into the secular world and start like, I've been in ministry my whole life and now I'm not gonna be in ministry anymore. And I was, 45 minutes before, he's like, I have insufficient contact with lost people. I feel like your solution might be before your very eyes, like integrate your vocation and your calling. So if the reason that we want to focus on these integrations is if thriving helps us this is the other thing about thriving I have to say. The thriving practices are not self-improvement practices. They are ways to help you seek Jesus with your spirit, body, mind, emotions, and relationships. If you successfully cultivate health without touching Jesus with these pieces of you, you have failed. Yeah, you're faking it. So if we can help each other touch Jesus with these different parts of us and draw strength up toward development is where the fruit happens. We will leak it all out as our work and families and teams blow us all apart, right? If we don't, we are integrating those things so that all that strength is available to our development. Because at the end of the developments are where the fruits come. It's at the point of becoming that you're fruitful. All the places where you are becoming something you weren't a minute ago, that's where you're bearing fruit. So the notion of is it to be or to do isn't useful. It's to become. And you become where you are doing, where you couldn't do before. You follow that? You do, you grinning and giggling. Okay. Do they have things?
Give us 1 minute.
Okay, good. You're welcome. I thought they actually messaged give us 1 minute. Okay, nope. So then develop. Are we still together? Or because I've been saying a lot of words and I'm not are we good? Yeah. All right. Aristotle, because you better be good because I'm going Aristotle now. Okay. Are we good? We good? You ready for a break? No, Aristotle said, yeah. Aristotle said there's 3 kinds of work. How many kinds? 3. But before we go on, what are the 5 dimensions we want to thrive in? Emotions, mental, physical, relational, spiritual. Okay, that's good. I feel like you just hit it at the park, just smack. The 3 things for spirit. You want him to or me? Yeah, withdraw, gather, obey. And in obey, it's not to get Jesus to like you. It's because you're afraid of disobeying. You're his apprentice. So the place you should expect to be met by him is in your work together. The work you do together is the stuff he tells you to do. There's a difference between reflexive obedience and reflective obedience. Reflexive obedience is the obedience of a slave who is afraid to be struck because they disobeyed. Reflective obedience is the obedience of a son or a daughter or an apprentice because they expect to be taught in the act of obeying. They expect that the command they were given was so they could become. right? Guiding them to mastery. Okay, so Aristotle said there's three kinds of work. There is technical work or technological work, building a chair, writing a program, okay? That's good work. There is intellectual work, philosophical work, like the academy. That's good work. But then there's something called poetical work. Poetical, poetical work, all right? Poetical work, poiesis, is the act of bringing forth. When a midwife draws a baby into the world, she is not putting a baby in the world, and she is not putting a baby in the mother. She's drawing a baby forth. When a farmer brings a plant to maturity and fruit, he is not putting fruit in the world or putting fruit in the plant to come into the world. He is drawing it forth out of where it already has always been. The glory has already always been uniquely yours and uniquely inside you, ever since you were made, and then when Jesus got in you too. Your job as a leader is to look in here and to look in there and in there and in there and identify that and draw it out. The best place to do that at is at the point of their recent experiences. Not experiences 1,000 years ago, but experiences. Let's do the next slide. Oh, sorry, before we do that, when we do this, this is what we've noticed. The lights come on. We've noticed that when we ask, let me say it like this too. I get a monthly call with all my direct reports, and I don't ask them much at all about their work. I ask them about the integration in their work, but I spend a lot of time on their thrive and a lot of time on their development and a little bit of time on their work, just a little bit. Not, are you doing your work, but I need to know it's being integrated. And they're slowly catching on that, like, the purpose of my power is their good, not their productivity. And so they're starting to lean into their becoming, and accidentally, super cool stuff just starts happening all around them. It's like the lights came on. It's like all of a sudden the world starts being saved by them stopping trying to save it. Because as they are changed in the world is changed. The lights come on. And this invisible Jesus becomes incontrovertibly visible, inarguably visible in the place where they live, in the refugee camp in Lebanon, while they cry about their team falling apart and these women whose lives are wrecked, and they touch their heart and they live in the emotions and they find their feelings and they find where Jesus is touching them and they lean in, they make sure they go for that run so that they have the energy to actually engage. And then they walk through the camp and they can't get any of their work done because they're so busy healing the sick and driving out demons that they weren't expecting to run into today. You know, it's like, oh man, I just don't have time to do all my work. People keep getting saved.
Praise God.
Praise God, right? Yeah, okay, so next, and then I think we're gonna abandon ship in just a minute. And then I'll send you to break and we'll come back. Actually, do you want to go to break right now or you want to go break in 2 minutes? 2 minutes. All right, next slide. This is how you're developed. This isn't how you should be developed. It's how you're developed. Lots and lots of research has gone into this. Development happens 10% from content delivered to you. Yeah, I know, right? And all the money goes there. 20% from others, like your small group or a mentor or a friend. 70% from reflection on cogent experiences. Reflection on cogent experiences. They like to say it comes from experience. It's on the job experience, but like you can be on the job for a long time and never change. The change happens when you wisely reflect with skill on concrete experiences. Even when someone's interviewed for a job, someone might say, well, she doesn't have enough experience, but they don't mean that she hasn't been on the job long enough. They mean that there are specific experiences she hasn't had. Experiences. This is why I asked you to come back with an experience, a recent experience. Because what we're going to do after the break is I'm going to entertain a couple of questions just to make sure that we're all cognitively in roughly the same place. And then I'm going to guide you through and after experience reflection on your recent experience so that you have an experience of having done this. Okay? Does that sound fair? You good? Huh? Here's the kinds of experiences in case you don't know what you're going to reflect on, because that'll make it really dull for you. Yeah, or confusing. A recent thing that went really right. A recent thing you did that went really right. A recent thing you did that went really wrong. Both of those are just as good as the other. A new experience you had that you would just like to reflect on because you might like to do it again. Yeah. Or a recent experience that had a very high degree of emotional content. Yeah. Anytime you can reflect on one of those is good because that water probably was choppy and you probably weren't ready for it. Yeah. Like none of us are ready for it. It's not that we're not going to reflect on these experiences in order to correct your performance. That's not the purpose. It's not even in getting a better, it's in the outcome. The act of reflecting with Jesus on the experience is where the light touches the leaf and pulls the plant into maturity. It's where the act of reflecting on it with Jesus, not the outcome of the reflection, but the act of reflecting on it with Jesus is where the light pulls the plant into maturity. It does not matter what comes out of the reflection. It matters that someone paid attention to you while you are paying attention to your experience. Somebody give like a single thunderous applause. All right. All right. Do I send it a break or are you coming to take the mic? All right. So by way of 5-minute flyover or 2-minute flyover, because they said I could do it in less than 5 now. On the assumption that there is glory inside the people that I lead, and on the assumption that Paul's right and that the world is saved by the making visible of Jesus, the expression of that unique glory on those assumptions, and because we've all experienced it, we know it, we've seen it, we've seen that flash. Sometimes it's sustained. I think Jim even said it. What did he say yesterday? There was a joy that exuded from Jehu that was the stunning stuff of Shekinah glory, right? He might have been trying to make a joke, but he was just making a cogent observation of what we were seeing. You've seen it. You've known, you want to take off your shoes, right? Like you do. So on the experiential assumption and the textual, the scriptural assumption, that the task is to bring forth the glory that is in you and in the people that you serve by leading, right? On that assumption, you want to help them bring the fullness of their soul into contact with Jesus. And they do that through practices, not through values or statements or cognitive ideas. Values are posters on the wall. Fitness, right? Learning. Practices change stuff. Values are the vitamins and minerals. Practices are the whole foods that deliver the vitamins and minerals into your actual self. So you want to help people cultivate practices to thrive spiritually, physically, cognitively, emotionally, and relationally. Then as they grow stronger, almost immediately, because they're bringing all the parts of their souls and not just their spirit and mind. In the tradition I grew up in, I was taught to bring my spirit and mind to Jesus. Other friends of mine who grew up in other traditions were taught to bring their spirit and emotions to Jesus. But we can bring our whole selves to Jesus and therefore must, right? So as we grow instantly stronger, right away, that strength, that vibrancy can leak if we don't integrate. It's like if a tree trunk were like suddenly split all to bits, it can't hold up fruit-bearing branches anymore. So we want to integrate and drive that strength up into the questions of who are you becoming? And you learned that at the edges of your competency, where your work is almost too hard for you, or your work is novel and outside of your normal range, right? And the way that you get the value of those experiences is by careful reflection. That's the review. Ask me some questions, and in a minute, I'll lead you through this experience. And then I'll send you to small groups for probably 20 minutes. In small groups, your task will be, what was the most important thing? What was good, bad, missing, or confusing? What do I want to do with this? And I'll tell you those questions again later. Okay, so what questions do you have that I can maybe serve you with an attempt at an answer? Yeah.
I believe this is develop the draw forward. It's focus on the integration, not their productivity. What is the integration again? Exactly.
Right. When I'm checking in with one of my colleagues that I help, right, that I lead, I do ask them about their work, but I don't ask them what they're getting done so much. I don't, how do I say it like this? I don't want them to experience me as a check on what they're getting done. If I were running a factory or a store and they weren't cleaning the shelves, then we'd have two conversations at the same time, or they might be one after another. Let's figure out why you can't clean the shelves. And you have to clean the shelves because otherwise we can't sell this stuff and can't give all the money to Mother Teresa, whatever, missional bottom line. But then also there would be a developmental conversation where we use the work to discover what's going haywire in their life that makes them the kind of person that can't clean the shelf, right? We follow the disintegration to a place where we could maybe assist some healing. But when I do talk to my direct reports, because their work is in another country from me, doing different things I'm not involved in, I'm most interested in how are they integrating their work with God's. Like, do they have a vision statement? Because if they do, they're probably not going to be okay. Do they have eyes to see what God is doing? Then they're probably going to be all right. That doesn't mean a vision statement's a bad thing, but can you see the difference where, like, I've crafted a vision statement and now I've got to continually get God behind it. Or as I've opened my eyes and now I see what Jesus is doing, I'll join him there. These are two really different ways to live, right? So are they integrating their work with God's? Are they integrating their oikos and their mission, or are they pinned between the two of them, crucified on the pinions of trying to be a good person? How are they integrating with their team? I'm really interested in how conflict is managed on their team. Culture is how things get done. And if you don't have an explicit plan for how conflict will be managed, then conflict will be managed this way. You will manage it according to your family of origin, and I will manage it according to my family of origin, and all of our crap will burn down. Right? So you got an explicit description of how we will do these things, these important things. And then how do we integrate our vocation and ministry? Yep.
When all we have known is that the two are separate and pulling them apart.
That's good. That's very good. I try to back people. Thank you. You guys are so helpful. How do you teach people to integrate vocation and ministry when all they have been taught separates them? Did I get that right? Yeah. I personally try to back people off of disciple making. And I try to push people toward disciple being. So your job is the place where you are Jesus's disciple. Let's say you work in, give me a job, accounting. You're an accountant. What I would encourage that person to do is to spend a couple of months carefully rereading over and over again the four Gospels, over and over and over again. And anytime Jesus says something that really lights him up, I'd encourage them to sit with it and ask Jesus, what can I practically do with this thing right now? Right? And then I would dare them to try something really, really terrifying. I would dare them to make the water cooler talk one time. Hey, you will never believe what I read today. This is blowing my mind. Right? And then you honestly tell them why it's blowing your mind, not why it should blow their mind. You're not making a disciple. You're being a disciple in front of them. You are making yourself visible as a disciple, which has collateral beauty of making your relationship with Jesus visible, your apprenticeship, which has collateral beauty of getting the edges of Jesus visible, which is your task. So I think the path to integrating vocation and ministry, the center of it, is revivifying disciple being and letting disciple making be a very important outcome of that. But if you don't know how to be a disciple, whatever disciple you make is going to be kind of a failed experiment. Yeah. Yeah. Yep.
That whole ecosystem analogy, the third one of which is our leaders.
Oh yeah. Okay. In the New Testament. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So. Yeah, I will. I had to shake out the fact that this is. You managed to ask a question that's going to turn into a long time. So the question is, in the ecosystem analogy, what was that third kind that equates to leaders? Why is it that? And what were the kinds of leaders? He asked me offline. What are the kinds of leaders that are described in the New Testament? Did I get that right? Okay. So every species in an ecosystem is important. They all are valuable. If you take one of them out, the ecosystem will adjust and be diminished, but perhaps survive, except for a couple of kinds of species. The foundation species, like phytoplankton in the ocean, you remove those, all life on Earth stops, right? But you can't even see them. They're so small. They don't do anything dynamic. They just are. And by their being, they make life, like households. And therefore, they are incredibly important and should be the target of all of our work. Keystone species are the species that have a disproportionately large effect on the ecosystem, given their small number. Beavers, wolves, orcas, foxes, right? They're really important. You're smiling because of the fox socks. They're really important. If you remove them, the entire ecosystem collapses almost instantly. If you reintroduce them, the ecosystem becomes amazing. They put wolves back in Yellowstone 15 years ago. They thought everything was going to die. Yellowstone became like a primitive paradise in a matter of 3 years. They introduced, I said it was 3, but I think it might've been 13 wolves. Just 13 wolves saved an ecosystem by not trying to save an ecosystem, but just being wolves. Which then leads to the question, who are the keystone species? Because if I can find them and just help them be them, they will save an ecosystem. In the New Testament, the keystone species, I think it's leaders. I think leaders are the keystone species. I have reasons for that and I can unpack that, but it's too long. In the New Testament, there's 2 kinds of leaders, roughly, right? There's structural leaders and catalytic leaders. Or another way to describe it are local leaders and extra local leaders. The local leaders are the elders and deacons, who are heads of households, who are targeted at different needs of a city church. And again, in the New Testament, I know it's different now, and whether it should or shouldn't be, I have opinions that we're not going to get into that right now. But in the New Testament, all the believers in a city were the church at that city. They weren't allowed to divide on the basis of race or language or socioeconomic strata or preferred doctrine or cult of personality. All of those are forbidden and disciplined in the New Testament. However, we have in fact just embraced that as a way of being. Yeah, and I don't understand how that's a surprise to all of us, but it is, right? Although we've read the Bible a lot of times. So elders and deacons. The extra local leaders, who are not more important, I just put them up here because they get on airplanes and fly around the world a lot. Apostles, prophets, evangelists, shepherds, teachers, Ephesians 4. They exist to catalyze growth in the local expressions of Jesus, right? To equip the saints for the work of the ministry. I can find those people. I can find them whether or not they are in fact the pastor of a church or whether they are in fact a missionary or the leader of a mission agency. I can find them. You can find them. But instead of trying to find them, what I've decided to do is take a step back and blur my eyes and just say, if you're leading and you're bleeding from it, you're the keystone species. If you're leading at cost, you're the people. And as you go, so goes the story. There's other stuff we have to do, but if we don't do you, none of it matters. That was a really long answer. I apologize for the wordiness. All right. Anybody else before we do our exercise? I might be going long. I'm going long. Anybody else? We do? Yep.
Quick detail.
Oh, quick details.
On the circle, others are 20% and experience is 70%.
Yeah, content, others, experience. So this, again, this isn't a description of how development should happen. This is a description of when they actually dug into the developmental journeys of people who have been successfully developed. They found that 70% of their development came from on-the-job experience, specifically reflected upon. 20% came from investment from other people, coaches, mentors, in our case, like spiritual directors, counselors. 10% came from content, books read, courses taken, lectures heard, right? 10%. The best development seemed to happen when people's experience called for some content that they didn't have. And some content was delivered that made sense of their experience. And then they were scaffolded in changing their approach to their experience by help from others. Which is why this, I don't think anybody consciously decided this, but our instincts have designed this conference this way for this reason. Yeah. By instincts, I mean the Holy Spirit who lives inside us. Yeah. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, good. Yeah. I will say though, sometimes the Spirit can't get what he wants done because our instincts are they're out of syzygy. They're warped or they're bent or they're overdeveloped in an incorrect direction. So there's something to be said for the treasure for sure. There's also something to be said for the vessel, right? Not making the vessel great, but like you want to get your instincts and Christ's instincts close, because you always live out of your instincts. You don't live out of what you think. You live out of how you unconsciously feel in the moment. So any work you do on your instincts is good work. Yep.
In the community of interest, that does allow balance. I might be out of balance as I was for this meeting, and you all rebalance.
Good.
That was important.
If you can't hear or to the recording, he says there's value and wisdom in the community of leaders that provides balance. And this is even explicitly written, right? In 1 Corinthians 12. Let a prophet stand up and speak until another prophet has something to say, then let the first one sit down. And the next one stands up and they talk, and let the others decide what actually came from the Lord and what didn't. Right? There's some communal discernment, even of the voice on a Sunday morning. Imagine if like a couple people stood up after Sunday morning sermon and said, I really appreciated what sister so-and-so or brother so-and-so said. I think we should really focus on these two things. And like, what's not spoken is, and the rest of it, probably you can scrap, right? But like, right? But like, these two are the things, I think these are the things from the Lord that we should take away. Then the community goes home going, wow, a couple of different people really thought that I should do something with these two things. I'm off topic. Last question, if there is one. Yeah.
How do you deal with an ecosystem that seems like beyond repair? How do we even begin to work from that leadership standpoint, or
Yeah. Whew, you're overwhelming me now. Okay. Let me ask Jesus a question, and then I'll repeat the question. He says, what do you do when the ecosystem looks too sick to repair? That was what he said? That what you asked me? I refuse to be selective in my expectations of resurrection. Yeah. I refuse to be selective in my expectations of resurrection. I will say it is an act of will on my part, though, because there's a lot of evidence to the contrary. Of course, there's a lot of evidence to the contrary of Jesus's resurrection until he rose as well. I think everyone but Lazarus was a failed experiment. And the Talitha Kumi, the girl in the tent, girl in the veil. That said, like I'm having to ask questions. I'm involved in different organizations in different ways. I'm having to kind of sit back and ask, Lord, where is the edge of my agency? Not my organization, but where is the edge of my responsibility and my ability to affect change? Because if it doesn't extend past where the center of the cancer is, I'm not responsible for that cancer, as far as I can tell. And then I have to ask questions of what do I do? Yeah. Okay, let's do an after experience reflection because that was a heavy question. I need to shake that off. So let's move to the next slide. Good. All right, good. Good. I was going to make a pace joke and then I forgot it. So I'm clearly overly caffeinated. An after experience reflection is designed to help your friend, or you can do it with yourself, or it's better to do it with someone else. It's designed to help your friend reflect on a recent experience around 3 dominant questions. There's going to be like 15 questions total, but it's 3 basic questions. What happened? What, so what, now what? What, so what, now what? What actually occurred? Not what I think occurred. How do I feel about how it occurred, right? But what occurred and how do I feel about it? So what was most important about that? And then now what will we do differently moving forward? What could we do differently moving forward? Maybe we'll do it exactly the same way, but what could we do differently moving forward? Okay. That's enough of that. Next slide. Yeah, so what I'd like you to do, I'll give you the PowerPoint. You actually have all these questions on a piece of paper inside your folder. So maybe disengage from me as lecturer and just engage me the way you did when you gave me your eye contact before. Remember that experience where we saw each other for a moment? So just go back to there. I'm going to ask you these questions. I will set the pace. You can jot the answers to the questions down, or you can just hold them in front of your mind. You're doing this reflection on a recent experience. Every one of you has a different one. Remember that the outcome is not important. What's important is that someone, and in this case, it's actually an environment, is attending to you while you attend to the experience. That is what generates the upward pull. You follow? All right, so take a second, take 10 seconds and just find that experience in your mind. And Lord Jesus, would you encircle the memory of the experience? Would you encircle the reflection on the experience? Would you keep peace within and chaos without? Would you turn down the effects of caffeine on my pace? Would you also obscure the entire conversation from the enemy so that the enemy can't introduce things? Also, so that the enemy can't overhear things that maybe are said in small group or that are even just whispered out loud or written on the paper. Would you obscure from his line of sight anything that happens in this conversation? Amen. All right, so take a moment and either read in your mind or on the paper, just describe the event. Where were you? How was it, hot or cold? What was the room like? Who was there? Let's focus on those questions. Go ahead and do that. Who were all the players and what was it like there? Sensory memories, sight, sound, smell, taste, touch. Try not to move ahead in the questions. Try to just be in the memory. Hey. Okay, now what was your role? And a good way to answer this question would be like, well, I convened the meeting. I was the speaker. I was the dad that was trying to get my kid to do the thing I always tell him to do, but he never does, right? Whatever. What was your role? And what actions did you take in order? Chronological order is important. Try to remember them, write them down, think about them, but what concrete actions did you take? Okay, now the purpose of, occasionally I'm going to sit down and I will be, I'm breaking the fourth wall. I'm telling you what's happening as you do the experience. The purpose of the describe piece is to help you remember as accurately as possible what actually happened. Because every time you remember something, your memory of it changes. No one's an accurate rememberer of things. Every time you think of it, it changes a little bit. So a way to mitigate against that a little bit is to force it into chronological order and sensory memories. Okay. So now we're gonna notice things. When we notice without judgment or excuse. You don't have to excuse a feeling. You don't have to judge a feeling. You're noticing it. If you do excuse or judge, pretend you didn't and start over. Okay. So what did you feel? How did you feel and what did you feel? I start with how because sometimes people can't get to what without how, but name the emotions: sad, happy, excited, nervous, angry, frustrated, disgusted, joyful, dejected, lonely. Name emotions. What did you feel? And you may have felt something in the beginning, something different in the middle, and something different at the end. You can also write that. So how challenging was it? And what made it so? So like you're a natural and it was awesome. It was like water skiing on marshmallows, or was it like really, really hard or somewhere in the middle? And what made it that way? So where, if anywhere at all, did you explicitly notice Jesus in the moment, in the event? I'll ask you a different question in a moment about the same thing, but where did you notice Jesus, if at all? There. Yeah. When you were there, the version of you that was there, did you catch sight of Jesus at all? And now looking back, do you see Jesus any place you didn't notice then? And it could be useful to ask Jesus directly if he was around someplace he'd like you to notice. Okay, so I typically will grab everyone's attention, or the person I'm talking to, their attention before I'm ready to, because I have a predisposition to try to encourage them to hunt for Jesus. But the question is notice, right? We're not like Jesus excavators, right? We notice, we discover. So he might have just been invisible on purpose, right? So we don't force them to find a Jesus that was playing hide and seek with them right then, right? So that's what we move to. So what? Let's get the next slide. Oh, there it is. All right. So consider, what was your contribution? And this seems like the last question or the recent question about what did you do in order, but it's different in that now you're summarizing what you think the effect was, right? What did you contribute? The ingredients might have been lots of different things, but what's the dish you made? What impact do you think you had there? Not how impactful, but what was it? How effective was that contribution? Scale of 1 to 10. 1, disaster. 10, salvific. Okay. How effective? Completely subjective. Now, this may have been something you've never done before. It may have been something you've done a million times before. And both of those kinds of experiences are useful to reflect on because we're not trying to improve fast. We're trying to improve slowly. Weeds grow fast, trees grow slowly. So compare. Have you taken this approach before? And if so, how did this event compare with that one? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Take like 10, 15 more seconds to make a comparison or two, even if it's just jotting down a comparison between the last time you did this and this time. All right, now I have to use some warning signs like we learned about, like danger. You're going to judge yourself, and I don't want you to do that. Okay. With the next question, it's important that you hear what the question is. The next question is, given the same scenario, what different approach could you have taken? What word is not there? Should. We're not measuring the rightness or wrongness. We're not trying to get you to think of a better way. We're trying to give you the opportunity to live in two dimensions of the multiverse at the same time. In this timeline, you did what you did. If you had tried something else in a different timeline, how could it have gone? Right? So think about something you could have done differently and what different outcome it would have had. This allows you to have two experiences to reflect on for the wear and tear of one. That's all we're doing. We're doubling the reflective opportunity. So what could you have done differently and how might it have gone differently?
No judgment, so you're not thinking what could you have done better, what could you have done worse, or could you?
Yeah, so like if I were doing an AER on this, I might be like, okay, well, I could have done the AER in the beginning so that they had an experience beforehand. If I had done that, how would the time have gone? How might the questions have been different? What else would I have had to rush later? How would it have gone differently? So now I have two different experiences, both of which I'm probably pretty happy with, right? Because it's all about good enough, right? And now I got two memories available to me, but I only had to do this once, and you only had to endure it once, right? Okay. All right, now let's pause in our exercise. I'm gonna break fourth wall again, kind of step over here. This is a little bit tiring, isn't it? Yeah, a little bit. Because either you're having a hard time keeping your mind on it because there's not someone right in front of you making direct eye contact with you. You're not talking it back, right? It's a little harder. Or you are emotionally right there and there's not someone making direct eye contact with you on the repeated, anchoring you in the present moment, right? Team meetings are great. One-on-ones are way more important. Just keep that in mind, okay? One-on-ones cover the distance on both of those things. Either helping the person stay in the moment or helping the person stay in this one. All right, okay. Let's do the last step. We're gonna do now what? So what did you learn about this skill, about yourself, or about God? Right, in this reflection, and it should be a tiny thing. It could be something giant, but it should be a little bitty thing, some small thing. What did you learn about yourself? You know, I was really uncomfortable measuring how effective my contribution was. I noticed that about myself, right? What did you notice about yourself, about the thing you tried to do, or about God? The next question, in what ways could you afford to change some things? Now, I can afford one meal at a restaurant and I can afford another meal at a restaurant. Doesn't mean I should buy them or I should buy one or the other. You don't have to change off of this experience. Remember, it's not the outcome, it is the attention. So what could you afford to change about your attitudes, about your biases, about your values, about your approach? What could you afford to change that might stand you in good stead to do something a little better next time? You all okay? Yeah. So the three people who spoke speak for everybody. It's good. I like it. Good. All right. I'm going to call it here. No, I'm going to give you the time. I'm in a hurry for no reason. Okay, now I'm gonna encourage you with number 6. It's on your sheet. It's inside your folder. Choose an action step and maybe share it with your small group when you go to small groups later. We're not going to do small groups right now because I ate up all the time answering questions and doing this with you. But when you're in small groups later, maybe take a moment and just share, hey, I've got this action step I'm going to try off of that reflection. Okay. Try to attach a due date to your action step so it's concrete and real. When I do this in a one-on-one with someone, I try to get it as vivid as possible, as concrete as possible. I'm going to try to have a conversation with so-and-so. Describe the conversation. What are you going to say? What are you going to ask? Okay, and by when? And I'll call you the next day and see if you did. Right? Not because they need the accountability, but because they need the accountability. Yeah. Conversations are sometimes hard to do. They don't fit into life for some reason. I don't know why that is, because it should be the middle of life. But sometimes we just need some external help to assure that we have the conversations that are most important to us. All right, so shake it off, come out of your shindig if you're there. Here are some questions I want to ask you, and you can offer them back to the room, okay? And I'll repeat them for the recording. What do you think was most important in the talk or in the reflection? What did you notice you felt in the reflection, positive or negative? What was good, bad, missing, or confusing? Any of those is fine. And know that none of this would hurt my feelings, right? Try to connect around those 3 questions. What's good, bad, missing, or confusing? What did you notice you felt in the reflection? What's most important? Take 30 seconds for you introverts to think before an extrovert starts talking. You guys did really well. Like you did really well. And on two levels. The front part was like real high energy and like a fire hose of things. And then you went on a break and you put calories in, you came back and the pace was real slow and nobody overtly went to sleep. And I'm really proud of you for that. Good job. Okay, what do you got? Good, bad, missing, or confusing? What did you notice you experienced in the reflection, if anything? And what's most important?
You stop to take time to look back. Situation, but it's just fine, fine. I'll have plenty to do. Or we know we might have needed to stop and reflect, think about changes or whatever.
Yeah. She said you stopped and you reflected on a thing. We've got a lot of things to do. So we could just fly by it. Kind of the way you could swallow without chewing. That's painful and you don't get any nutrition. Right? So these reflections are a way to chew your food. Yeah. Good. What else? Practicing emotional what?
Neutrality is difficult, like not judging good, bad, and using those, labels and judgments of my actions or emotions is the hardest part.
Yeah, practicing like a judgment neutrality, not what does Paul say? Neither excusing nor judging ourselves. Practicing that kind of neither excusing nor judging is really hard. And we're trained to do the opposite, to constantly reduce the world to good or bad, right or wrong. I identify as a 1 on the Enneagram witchcraft, and that's especially hard for me. It really is, because like, yeah, 911, woo! It's how we navigate the world, right? So, but there's more, right? There's more colors than black, white, or gray. There are more colors than that. Yeah, your hand go up? No, that was a stretch. That's what 7s are for, she says. That's right. When I grow up, I'm going to be just like you. Yeah.
Sometimes it seems like lately, for me, life has been so busy and complicated that when it's all done and I get home, decompression is just throwing it away of the experience and
Yeah.
on the TV or going out in the garden, which is important. But this, I don't want to waste the experience. I feel like without the self-reflection to make sense of the day or the week or the experience, you waste the experience and can't grow, get better.
He says that's okay. He says life is full, and when you get home, you wanna just dump it, like decompress. What you don't want to do is revisit it. But without the revisit, either daily or weekly or something, you don't get the nutritive value out of the experience. You don't get to be reflective or become more self-aware. And that's I'm full of solutions about that, and I'm going to not give them because you are noticing, and I'm caffeinated. Continue. What else you notice? Yeah.
In a similar way, my friend was stepping out to her own faith, doing something I'm uncomfortable with. And so taking the time to look back at was in the room where he was during that. I didn't, once it was over, I probably was just so relieved it was done. And I did it. That I didn't take the time to see, I guess, like how he felt about the work was during that.
Good. Well done. Well done. And well done that you did it and that you reflected. Well done. Well done. He said he was doing something that was very hard. His memory, his thing, not the remembering of it, but the thing, right? The thing was outside your comfort zone. And so he really have attention to pay to where is Jesus in this, because he was just trying to shoot the rapids on the thing. But then in looking back, right, it's a different experience. Good. Yeah.
I think I chose the wrong experience.
Oh, yeah?
I don't think I was supposed to, I couldn't pay attention. I think maybe I wasn't supposed to go into that one yet. There was another one.
She says she may have selected the wrong experience. That maybe this experience was the one she selected, but this is the one that perhaps would have been a better choice, right? Yeah, I translated a little bit. Is that okay? All right, good. Yeah. Yeah, the wonderful thing about chewing your food is that you can just take a different, if you put the wrong bite in your mouth, yeah, it's still on there are no wrong bites, it's on the plate. You can just take another bite when you get your moxie back. Yeah.
One of the most important things I think you said for me was that we don't have to like excavate Jesus from an experience that we could notice, and the answer could be I don't know, or maybe not.
Well said. You don't have to excavate Jesus. I hate repeating everyone's stuff, but it's important. You don't have to excavate Jesus. The answer might be I don't know, or maybe he wasn't even visible. It's fine. You're discovering, right? Let me see what time it is. See if there's. I'm going to hold 60 more seconds for another. Yeah.
I noticed I felt empowered by the experience, and I was also really grateful that we were all having the experience at the same time, or the opportunity for the experience at the same time. Usually this happens for me in my alone time in the mornings, but to have it be a corporate experience was really meaningful.
He said it was empowering and meaningful that it was corporate instead of just in his alone time in the morning. The purest form of love you can give someone is attention. It is the highest act of generosity. It is your only truly non-renewable resource. It is the center of you available to the center of them. Servant leadership sometimes gets reduced to being the guy who stacks the chairs. And that's good. You should do that. You should wash the dishes and stack the chairs. But you pay attention because it costs. Yeah, that's anytime. And if you can engender in your community practices in which you pay attention to each other and you waste the time to do it, you're probably going to predispose your people to fruitfulness instead of merely productivity. Yep.
Mine isn't about the AER, it's from before the break.
It's okay. Yeah, that's great because it'll make me sad or stoke my ego. So it's good. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
I just want to say it's important for me. You opened up by asking us, how would you like to be led? And in my heart, I just kept thinking, like, I just want to be seen by my leader. And then you took the time to make eye contact and see every single one of us.
Oh, that's good. I'm glad. Her most important moment was the question of how do you want it to feel when you are led? Yeah, that's enough. Yep. Yeah.
So this has really occurred to me. I was in ministry for 5 years, and then the Lord brought me home and had me take a year process. And I just realized that if I had the practice of processing on the daily, that I probably would not have been out of commission for a year.
Well said, Lee, right? That's what that was. She wouldn't have been out of commission for a year if she had the practice of processing on the daily. Another way to say this might be, you don't have time not to do this. Yeah. Yep.
What I was thinking was kind of similar to that, just reflecting on how it can feel like, oh, there's another thing to do, there's something more, there's like more development, there's something like that, which is so good, but it can feel like another. And yet the processing it actually relieves pressure and gives us the ability to no longer carry those things with us.
Yes.
So that we can walk through it, process it, leave it there, like grow from it, but leave it there so that we can.
Very good. If there's an energy investment in processing it, but it's a small energy investment compared to the amount of energy you're expending to carry it around unprocessed, right? And that's especially true of trauma, but that's less true, but just as true of these bites you have in your mouth you haven't chewed, right? We live really fast. So I wanna give the mic to Jim. Before I do that, it'll be short what I say next. I'm gonna talk to you not as you, but as the leader of whatever you're leading, as a leader in your community. Right now I'm gonna talk to you. You are not their therapist. If you are a therapist, you're not their therapist. You are not their spiritual director. If you are a spiritual director, you're not their spiritual director. You are not trying to make a camp circle where you light fire and talk about your feelings and everyone cries and hugs and then goes back. You are their leader. You are drawing them forward into more fruitfulness, right? You will use some of the techniques and competencies of a therapist or a spiritual director or a coach, but you are helping them engage their master in the task that you share together. I love what the Marines say. I love it. when they talk, they say, mission first, Marines always. Right? And you could just the same way say mission always, Marines first. It's both and. We are becoming, and you lead them in the becoming by leading them in the task. Don't get confused about your role, even if you're learning to lead a little bit differently. Okay? Love and peace. You guys are wonderful. You're beautiful people.